Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Baseball Podcast. We're coming to you live from PNC Park. Um, Today, we're going to be discussing Pool C of the World Baseball Classic. And you know why we're talking about Pool C today, Ethan?
Can we go back? Why are we in PNC Park?
I don't know.
Sorry, why did you determine that we were suddenly in PNC Park?
I don't know. I mean, listen,
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
I just want to be near a true hero of the game like Bob Nutting, who, in spite of being one of the wealthiest owners in the league, fields a team that makes as much money as like just Mike Trout.
Right.
One of my favorite owners in the game.
Why wouldn't you want to spend time near a bastion of morality
True.
like Bob Nutting?
The man knows how to make money.
Yeah.
Put a winning team on the field. That's, not the same thing.
You know what it is?
Not at all.
Too much overhead doing that.
Yeah, that's no. What if we just were a cheapskate and then we'll make the same amount of money and then we don't have to worry about, keeping it up. But anyway, listen. Pool C is not going to discuss itself, okay?
Ain't that the truth?
Today, or rather, perhaps more accurately, the other day, we had on a guest to discuss not the best team in this pool, but one of the least discussed teams in the pool, Great Britain. It was Russell Eassom. So you want to tell our legions of fans, adoring fans, frankly, you want to tell them a little bit about Russell? How'd you find this guy? Who is he? What's his credit card number?
Now, Russell's great. He is on the Bat Flips and Nerds podcast, which is, I would say, the preeminent baseball podcast with a British twist, I think is what they call themselves.
Until you said with a British twist, I was like, I don't know. Were you stepping on John Boy?
I thought you were gonna talk about us, and I was like, wait a minute.
I don't know. Stepping on the baseball podcast.
Bat Flips and Nerds, though, they're great. And basically the way it happened was I had DM'd at one point one of their writers named Brett Walker, just because he wrote a cool article, and I DM'd him just to be like, hey man, liked your article, whatever. So I ended up being like, hey, you want to come on and talk about, Team Great Britain? That'd be really fun. And he was like, I asked around the office, Russell's the guy you want to talk to. And I was like, right. Russell it is. I mean, I've been like a fan of him for a little while because I like the podcast, but anyway, big thanks to Brett for putting us in touch with Russell, but he couldn't have been nicer. He agreed to come on the show, and he actually put up with a lot because, just so our fans know, I had a meeting set for 6:30 at one point, and at like 6:29, I went downstairs, opened up my laptop to start the meeting, and my internet was down. And so I looked it up. I went on, the company's website, and they went, we're working on it. We'll let you know when it's like restored. And I was like, all right. I think this might not work out. So we had to pivot. And so, I messaged him back and was like,
you went like this.
How much more betrayal can I take?
Yeah, exactly. So I messaged him and was like, hey, my co-host's going to have to record. Sorry about that. And he was like, oh man, I wish you could join us. And I was like, unfortunately for you, I'll still be there. I just will be using my phone.
Don't get too excited.
Right. So he put up with us. Yeah. But no, he was super nice. Great chat. And he knew a lot about Team Great Britain. And he had a lot of insight for us. And big thank you to Russell for coming on the show. Go check out the Bat Flips and Nerds podcast because it's great, and check out all their writing. I want to say they have a contributor for each MLB team, like a British, correspondent or something, which I think is really cool. Go check out Russell on Twitter at Eassom, so Reassom. There we go.
Sort of like Reassom, like a Star Wars character.
I don't know how I didn't think of that.
Well, listen, that's why we're both on this podcast, not just one of us. So anyway, listen, Pool C, we're, as I said before, Pool C is not going to discuss itself. And frankly, this is a pool that you would assume maybe there's not so much to talk about because the United States is in it. So it's like, oh, okay, well, they're just going in the pool.
Which is true.
One, we don't know that. We do not know that. I assume that, but there's a little bit to talk about with the U.S. team too, and it's not just they have like an MVP candidate at every single position. How interesting! Because that is cool, that is fun, but I would not go so far as to say the U.S. team is overpowered in this tournament.
Now I would. I think you're being a little too harsh. I think everybody's being a little too harsh because we know Team USA backwards and forwards every single player, right? So we look at the offense and we go highest caliber offense maybe the world has ever seen. You know what I mean?
Well,
on one team.
To be clear, we look at the offense and we go,
Oh!
But like literally every single position on the field is just a perennial all-star.
right.
And I don't know if the world has ever seen a lineup like that. And so we're obviously very excited for that. And initially, you know, the World Baseball Classic's weird. You know, it's at a bad time. Teams don't always want to let their players play. We knew pitching might be an issue. But they got like Clayton Kershaw, they got Nestor Cortez and stuff like that. And so it was like, okay, you know, they might not have the best of the best, you know, the Verlanders and the Scherzers and DeGroms of the world. But, you know,
I don't think anybody expected at minimum DeGrom to be there because
exactly nobody expected that. And so here's the thing. So we kind of were like, well, we'll make do. You know, Clayton Kershaw can be their ace, and you know they've got a lot of starting pitching talent around that. And then Kershaw fell through, Nestor Cortez fell through, and stuff like that. And so that is a bummer, and I'm bummed too. But here's my thought process. I think people are actually underrating the U.S. just because of this factor, because people are looking at it and they're going, man, the U.S. lost so much pitching. And I mean, look at like I was listening to Baseball America's podcast today, and I think they're great. And I'm not trying to bash them, but they're talking about it. And they were like, Japan sends their absolute best guys, which is true. But they go, you have Ohtani, Yamamoto, Sasaki, and Yu Darvish. And so they went, that's 4 aces, or maybe 3 aces and like a very good number 2. And so they were like, the U.S., you know, they're going to have trouble competing with that. And I am of the opinion that I would take pretty much any player in MLB over any player in NPB. And obviously there are exceptions. Shohei Ohtani obviously came over to MLB and not only didn't miss a beat, became the best player in the league. Like it's not a direct 1-for-1. But like we're looking at these guys and we're going, oh, Kyle Freeland, man, come on. If Kyle Freeland went over to NPB, he would be one of the top 10 pitchers in the league. You know what I mean? So it's
yeah, I mean, I think that the counterpoint to this though is like 2 of the guys that Japan is putting out are already aces at the major league level. I mean, Darvish is probably at this point like he's probably like on the lower end of an ace.
Yeah, he's taking a little bit of a step back. He's still very good though.
Yeah, Ohtani is a legit ace. I mean, Ohtani's probably the best player in the whole world. You know, I don't think that there's a whole lot of competition there. I mean, Trout is a better position player, but Trout doesn't pitch. That's the
we don't need to get into why Ohtani is the greatest player in the world.
Like Sasaki is evident. Is it Sasaki or Yamamoto who's supposed to be getting posted soon?
I don't know. I think both of them are killer.
Yeah, I mean, like these aren't, you know, it's not like these guys are just carving up NPB, but like, you know, they don't have any future at the major league level. Like obviously it might not translate, but like I think a lot of people are really high on these guys, you know, even in terms of like them coming over to MLB. Like I think they legit have the best starting pitching.
I don't necessarily think you're wrong. I think you're probably right. But what I'm saying is I think we're like, I don't know what the opposite of rose-colored glasses are, but like I think we're looking at it through like whatever the opposite of that is, because we're looking at it and we're going, man, Japan has the best of the best and the DR has the best of the best. Although the DR suffered a couple losses.
The DR took a lot of losses.
Yeah, they did. And Sandy Alcantara is obviously on a different level than anybody on the US staff. But right. I'm sorry, I'm talking about Japan here. And here's my thing. The U.S. has plenty of depth at the starting pitching level. It's a lot of like number 3s. They've got Lance Lynn, Wainwright, Merrill Kelly, Kyle Freeland. I think
I don't know if it's fair to call Merrill Kelly a number 3. I feel like Merrill Kelly. I mean, he's the number 2 on the D-backs, right behind Gallen.
Well, here's I don't want to get caught up in semantics. Here's what I'm getting at though. None of them are aces. They're good pitchers. Every MLB team would love to have them, but they're not aces, right? And so we might look at it and like I'm not even saying that Japan doesn't have the best starting pitching in the tournament. I think they probably do. But here's what I'm saying though, like every single pitcher on the US pitching staff would go over to Japan and be absolutely lights out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, probably.
And so it's like, yo, Lance Lynn would be the best pitcher in NPB or like top five. Like Lance Lynn is excellent. He's an all-star in MLB. You know what I mean? Like Adam Wainwright was like pretty good last year, you know? Like Kyle Freeland is like decent pitching at Coors Field. Like we're looking at as MLB fans and we're going like, man, Kyle Freeland, like why isn't like Justin Verlander pitching for this team? And it's like Kyle Freeland would be the ace of pretty much any other pitching staff except for Japan and the Dominican Republic and stuff. And can I make one more point? Can I make one more point? The other thing is, I think if you're like, there is no other place where starting pitching matters less than the World Baseball Classic because you really only need 4 starters. Pitchers can't throw more than 65 pitches in the first round, and I think it goes up to like 80 and then 95. And dude, no MLB team is going to let their guy throw 95 pitches in the world. Like, it's just not going to happen. You know what I mean? So, like, you're looking at maybe 4 innings out of your starting pitcher if he's cruising. You know what I mean? And so, like, okay, fine. Like, let's say you have let's say you have Kyle Freeland's not going to start for the U.S., but let's take the worst starter. Let's say Kyle Freeland goes up against, Shohei Ohtani. Dude, that's fine. You could bang with him for 4 hours or for 4 innings.
The thing with Team US is that you're not really talking about them in the context of this pool because I think everybody knows, like, there's almost no way the US doesn't advance. There's almost no way the US doesn't go undefeated in this pool. Like they might drop one to Mexico. That's it. This bullpen is very good.
Dude, they have a lot of guys who all stars.
They have a lot of guys who maybe you don't know about. Like a lot of them kind of toil in obscurity because they're relievers. A couple of them are on the Rays. This is sort of an unsung hero type team.
Dude, these are like Devin Williams, Daniel Bard, David Bednar. Jason Adam came out of the woodwork. Nick Martinez, Adam Ottavino, Brooks Raley's a good lefty. I forgot Brady Singer can start. Like, dude, these are excellent. Yeah, I think pitchers. Brady Miles Michaelis. Yeah, like every single one of these pitchers, I feel perfectly confident handing the ball to. You know what I mean? So it's like I'm bummed like everybody else in the US has suffered like such a loss of pitching. But like it's no problem. I'm saying it right now. The US will win the tournament. The US will not lose a game.
You don't think they're going to lose any games?
I don't think they're going to lose a game. No.
I mean, I guess if they go undefeated in pool play and they win the tournament, then they will go undefeated.
Dude, their worst starter is like Miles Michaelis. Their worst starter is an MLB All-Star.
And I guess
like this past season.
Going to see Japan until the finals.
I mean, assuming they both make it that far. Yeah.
Right. But so the beast that they have to slay is the Dominican Republic, who we have not talked about in depth yet.
We'll get into that next episode.
Yeah, the Dominican Republic has better pitching probably across the board. But
I would have to look at their bullpen. I don't know about that.
I think their bullpen's kind of loaded too. Like they have a bunch of like elite relievers from what I remember. But like, dude, the Team USA, I mean, anybody who's ranking them outside of the top 3 is a lunatic. Anybody who's ranking them outside of the top 2 is probably also a lunatic.
I don't understand how anyone can rank them below number 1. Like, even if you say, oh, Japan's pitching staff is a lot better than the US, have we ever seen an offense to the level that has been compiled right now for the United States? Like, yeah, and I understand, like first of all, I just want to point out, Japan just lost their best player in Seiya Suzuki, their best hitter. I mean, obviously their best non-Ohtani hitter, right. and like, okay, they have the best of the best in NPB. There haven't been that many NPB hitters that have worked out. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not that confident that Japanese hitting is on the same level as Japanese pitching.
I mean, well, I don't want to get too caught up in Japan because, again, I mean, we already talked about them kind of a lot. And yeah, when you're talking about Team USA, the only other teams you're talking about are DR and Japan. Japan is the most successful team in tournament history. They have had a lot of success with guys who really, are very easy to sleep on. But looking at this team versus the DR, I mean, the US has the best offense in the whole tournament, and it's not even particularly close. And the DR also has an awesome offense. It's just, I mean, like you look at, I have Sean's projected lineup up for Team USA. It takes the first guy who was not an MVP candidate every year is, well, I guess Kyle Tucker, because he hasn't been up for that long, right?
Yeah, but he plays at an MVP level.
Yeah,
Literally,
Kyle Tucker
like,
rules. The only guy who's been up for any length of time in the lineup who is not an MVP race every year is Jeff McNeil, who's batting ninth.
yeah, who one is an injury replacement and two is still an all-star, and I think
Right.
had a batting title last year.
Yeah. So you got
Like,
Trey Turner, who is, if not the best shortstop in the league, he's top two, top three. You have
right.
Mookie Betts, who is really only not the best outfielder in the game because Mike Trout's in the game. And then, wouldn't you know it, the next
Lo and behold,
year, Mike Trout.
right.
After that, you have Paul Goldschmidt,
Reigning
who,
MVP.
yeah, reigning MVP. He was Paul Goldschmidt against the Phillies, but that was months ago at this point. And behind him, you have the best defensive third baseman in the game and an excellent hitter in his own right, Nolan Arenado. After that, you have Kyle Tucker. Kyle Tucker, who I'm mad at because he scourged the Phillies in the World Series. But you know what? Give me a World Baseball Classic title, and we'll call it even.
Call it
After that, you got Pete Alonso. Pete Alonso, home run derby champ, and also home run hitter in the regular season. Big home run guy. Batting seventh. Then you have JT Realmuto, best catcher in MLB still. Then you have batting title winner Jeff McNeil batting ninth. Guys who are not in the lineup. You have Tim Anderson, who I believe he also has a batting title, right?
I'm not a big Tim Anderson fan, but yeah, Tim Anderson's a good player.
Okay, yeah,
like
Tim Anderson,
Cedric
bench
Mullins,
player. You're a huge fan. Come on,
Cedric Mullins, Kyle
Yeah.
Schwarber, Bobby Witt, like
Yeah,
Will Smith, second best catcher in baseball. Like,
Yeah, and then-
it's silly, man.
yeah. This is the most stacked lineup you will probably ever see.
We did forget a huge name, Kyle Higashioka.
Oh yeah. You're right.
That one's bizarre to me. I'm assuming that's just a.
When you're carrying
I don't know
three
how that
catchers,
happened,
I
yeah.
mean, it's
I
probably
guess they wanted a pitch framing guy or something. I don't know.
yeah, like you probably have him, for defensive reasons, not for anything else. I don't think a lot of other teams are even carrying three catchers, are they? I think most are carrying
Well,
two.
I think we're gonna get into Mexico, which now only has one catcher, which
There
is
you go.
interesting.
So
Um,
look, Team USA, I mean, it's easy to say there's not a lot to say. I do want to say my piece on Team USA, why I'm a little worried about them.
Go ahead.
I don't know that I agree that starting pitching is going to be less important in this tournament, just because I don't think pool play matters to the US, and that's when the pitch count is the most limited. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if you don't see this top tier lineup all at once. Maybe against Mexico. And then after that, I bet it's a lot of like, okay, we want to make sure everybody plays. So they're all.
Well, Mark DeRosa did say
go.
that in pool play, everybody will get their time, and
Right,
then
yeah.
after that, he was like, "I'm going to roll with who looks the best."
Once you get out of pool play, like your starters, what's the semifinals cap? Is it 80 pitches?
I think it's 80 around there. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like if you have efficient pitchers, which admittedly, if you have strikeout pitchers, 80 pitches is like 5-6 innings at most. But, that being said, like in semifinal and finals play, if you have a team like Japan, I mean, they can, if they have to hold on to a 1-run lead and they don't trust anybody in their bullpen, like they can send one of their starters out if they have to. I don't know if that's recommended, but, having it's probably safe to say 4 elite starters for Japan. I think that the DR has 2 elite starters and 2 who I would say are solid. I don't know much about Contreras, and Johnny Cueto's old, but he's still okay. I like Team USA better against the Dominican Republic for sure. And against Japan, if the hitting is not cold, which is another thing I'm a little worried about, because I feel like a lot of these guys might come in cold just because, it's basically still the off season for a lot of these guys. In that situation, if pitching has to decide the tournament, then the US is not as well set up as maybe the other two teams are.
Well, here's the other thing though. Like it's not just about starting pitching. So like a team like Israel is going, okay, Dean Kramer's our guy. We got to throw him in the game we need to win, and hopefully he can go like 7 innings and get you there. Team
Right.
USA isn't in that position because worst case scenario, you throw Brady Singer or something out there against Japan or the DR. Let's say he gives up 5 runs, right?
Right.
I'm not I'm not convinced that that's a losing game. But let's say you throw Brady Singer out there, he gives up 2 runs over 3 innings, right? You can just, dude, you have an incredible bullpen. You know what I mean? Just
Well,
run,
and
dude.
you do
you
also
can work
later in the
6 innings out of
tournament,
that
you
bullpen.
you have your starters also. Like if
Exactly.
they put Brady Singer out there and then they go to Merrill Kelly, I still think that is not as good as maybe, how Japan could use 2 starters. But again, they don't have to worry about Japan until the finals. So
Yeah, I'm not trying to say the US is as good as Japan, but what I'm trying to say is like, is the gap that big that you're willing to put Japan over the US? Or is it like, oh, Japan might have a little bit of an edge? Well, let's look at the US offense that puts everyone else to shame.
right.
You know what I
I
mean?
think it all comes down to what do you expect offense to carry the tournament or pitching? Which, if
Doesn't
you
offense
expect
kind of always carry the tournament?
does it? I mean, I feel like the US won a lot of nail biters in the last tournament and they won the tournament largely on their starting pitching, right? It was like
Well,
uh
didn't they win the championship the game like 8-0?
did they?
I'm pretty sure.
But I mean, a lot of it was like Marcus Stroman, like pitching his heart out,
Yeah. Yeah,
whatever.
that's true. That's true.
Japan won all of their tournaments they've won twice, right?
Yeah, with Dice K as MVP both
Yeah, I
times.
mean, like they won with pitching and like scratching out runs with small ball, which I'm not a small ball guy, but if your hitters are cold, then sometimes that's the only way you're going to score runs. We saw that personally with the Phillies in the beginning of the playoffs when they were playing a lot of small ball because they just weren't really getting a whole lot of hits. And they made them stand up. And then later in the playoffs, they just started hitting tons of homers, which I thought was awesome. I'm here for that. So I guess for the US, we got to move on because there's other teams in this pool. For the US, if you think that the offense is going to come out and be cold, there's something to worry about. If you trust that all these MVP hitters are going to show up, or even like some of them,
I would say even if half
you're
your
going to be
lineup,
fine.
if half your lineup falls down, you have all stars on the bench that you could try.
Right.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like I just don't see a way the
Yeah.
US falls apart. Like you know what I mean?
Right.
Like
Yeah, I
it
mean,
could happen. I could be
we've
wrong. It
seen
could happen.
super teams fall apart before. In MLB, we've seen heavy favorites just inexplicably fall apart. But
Yeah.
this is a little bit different than a good MLB team. This is the best lineup ever created. But
Yeah.
let's move on because if you want to talk about starting pitching, probably the second best team in this division. I think definitely division pool. I think definitely the second best. And one of the best teams in the tournament, frankly, is Mexico, who I expect to be the runner up in this pool. And I expect it to be largely on the strength of their starters. So for Team Mexico, the big thing that I do want to talk about, as I mentioned, is their starting rotation, which frankly is one of the best in the entire tournament. So you have Julio Urias as their ace. Amazing. He is
An ace.
maybe the second best pitcher in the whole tournament. Then it's might be up in the air because Alcantara is
very good. Very good.
Yeah,
we can leave it at that. Very good.
I mean, it doesn't matter where he ranks necessarily. He's top 5 for sure. Then you have Patrick Sandoval, who was sort of sneaky good for the Angels last year and the year before. After that, you have Taijuan Walker, new Philly, Taiwan Walker has been pretty solid.
Solid.
He's not like the most exciting pitcher in the world, but he's a solid starter. And then their number 4 is Jose Urquidy,
who was
who is
very good for the Astros.
yeah. So I mean that's a hell of a rotation. So the problem
I think
is
that's better than the U.S. rotation.
that
Those
is
four,
definitively better than the US.
I mean, obviously the U.S. has a ton of depth because they have like 8 good starters. But I think
Right.
those 4 are better than any combination of 4 the U.S. could roll out there.
Yeah, and Urias is better than anybody on the U.S.
Well,
team.
of course, yeah. Of course.
Their bullpen, aside from Gallegos, from Giovanni Gallegos of the Cardinals,
yeah,
is not very good.
Well, they have a lot of
They have a lot of
like I think Javier Assad is like an interesting young guy for the Cubs. Luis Sessa is what he is. He's kind of a jag in the majors. Adrian Martinez. They have the corpse of Ali Perez. Jojo Romero, Philly's great.
Yeah.
Like they have a lot of guys who are like, again, like, on the world stage they'll play up. Like Jojo Romero might be nothing crazy in MLB, but he'll definitely get outs in the World Baseball Classic.
Yeah. They do have a couple of, I don't remember which ones are which, but a couple of these guys in this bullpen are Mexican League guys. The Mexican League is, it's not as good as like KBO or NPB. I don't know how it compares to the Taiwan League, but my impression of the Mexican League, and this is a hot take, I haven't done any research into this, is that it's not as high a level as a lot of these other world leagues out there. So I don't necessarily trust these dudes who are laboring in the Mexican League. They do have some MLB arms in their bullpen. None of them are super impressive. Gallegos is impressive.
Yeah, Gallegos is good.
Gallegos is a good pitcher. So he's sort of their closer by default.
With an excellent name.
Yes, that is also true.
Now, should we jump over to the hitting? They did suffer a big loss recently.
Yes.
In the whole Alejandro Kirk saga, which was kind of a mess.
He was supposed to be their catcher, and that hurt because Austin Barnes is a pretty good player. He's kind of an MLB backup, right?
Yeah, I think he's like a pretty good defender,
again,
kind of
different.
fast for a catcher, but not that much of a hitter. But on the world stage, he'll be good. There's nothing wrong with Austin Barnes.
Yeah, I mean, he's an MLB catcher. But compared to Alejandro Kirk, it's not the same.
Yeah.
Around the infield, I'm getting this all from Sean's projections, but I trust him. I'm pretty sure it's Joey Meneses at first base, but I like to call him Joey Meneses because it makes it sound like a disease. Like, oh, dude, I'm sorry. I talked to your doctor. We looked over your symptoms, and it's looking like you have Joey Meneses.
Yeah, he came down with hypervascular menesis.
Yeah, a little hypervascular Joey Meneses. So then you have
I'm
Luis
sorry, man.
Arias.
There was nothing that could be done.
Yeah, it's terminal. They have a terminal case of Joey Meneses at first base. I kind of want to make this a joke now. I like this, like a running joke. They have at second base Luis Arias, who is like
solid.
He's solid. He's kind of a low average good power guy from what I remember.
Yeah, he was like sneaky good for the Brewers.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. There's no problem there. Shortstop, they have Alan Trejo, who I actually don't know a whole lot about.
Fringe major leaguer, I think.
Right.
Nothing
That's
to write
why I don't know a lot about him.
But a major leaguer.
Yeah. At third base, they have Isaac Paredes, who is young.
He started off really hot for the Rays.
Yeah, young, has good power. He's on the Rays, and the Rays seem to have a real eye for talent. They've proven this over a long period of time. So, their infield is pretty good. I don't think that it's one of the better infields. I mean, maybe it is just because the bottom 10 of this tournament is just not putting out major league talent on a lot of these infields. But their outfield.
I think of the top. I think you mean like of the top tier teams. It's not quite on the. I mean, because they don't have Machado and stuff.
Yeah.
out there. But like these guys can hit. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it shouldn't be a problem. They also have Jonathan Aranda on the bench, who's a big leaguer. So in Mexico's outfield, they do have Randy Rosarena, as you said,
Yeah.
star
Star in the
star
making.
in the making. Very, very good player. Alex Verdugo, underwhelming because of what people said he would be, but a decent major leaguer.
Yeah,
Um,
he's a starter, you know.
yeah, he's good. He's not like the all-star that he was hyped as, but he's a good player.
Right.
And then in center field, they could go with Jaron Duran, who's been a little disappointing on the Red Sox, but he's still young. Or they could go with Alec
Yeah.
Thomas,
Jaron
who's
Duran, who famously
just didn't move
shrugged off
for a fly
foul
ball.
ball or fly balls in center field. There's got to be a problem with the visibility in Fenway. They got to fix that. 'Cause that was
No, I
funny.
like it better. I like it better when he just gave up.
Yeah, I guess because I'm not a Red Sox fan, maybe I don't care that much. Um,
Or I hope they go with Alec Thomas, who's part of the super exciting Diamondbacks core, who's a
mm,
big time prospect, and it would be a lot of fun to watch him play. But
yeah,
either way,
that's one of the great things about the World Baseball Classic is you get to see these prospects come up and play
oh yeah,
against major leaguers, kind of before their time a lot of the time.
absolutely, yeah. And I want to mention because we I think we were about to go past him. They have Brewers great Rowdy Tellez at DH, who's a
Oh yeah,
very
we
good
forgot
hitter.
about him.
Who's
Yeah,
a very good hitter. So like that is a good lineup. That's
yeah.
all major leaguers, which is a lot more than a lot of teams can boast.
Hmm.
And it's pretty much good major leaguers. The Alan Trejos of the world are like nothing special. But like
Right.
other than that, like it's good. You know what I mean? Like those are good players. I feel very
Yeah.
confident about that team.
It's a little bit of a top heavy lineup. Like the bottom of this lineup doesn't look very good. But if that's the worst thing you can say about a lineup, that's not that bad.
Right.
They
Having
are
like two holes in your lineup isn't the end of the world.
yeah, they are probably going to score plenty of runs and they are going to pitch well. I don't think there's much controversy. I think they're going to come out of pool play pretty handily.
Well, should we pivot to the I think the only team that could give them a run for their money to get out of full
Yes, we should. Let me
right.
pull the roster up real quick.
So I'll get started. Team Colombia, I think, is the firm number 3 in this pool,
Right, a
ahead
little
of
bit of a
Canada
dark
and Great
horse.
Britain. Yeah, I they've suffered some losses. They Donovan Solano pulled out. Jonathan India isn't going to
Yeah.
play, but well, okay. So let's get started.
Mm.
They're pitching their rotation, headlined by Jose Quintana.
Mm.
Very good this past year. Had a
Right.
renaissance. He kind of started to sputter at the major league level the past couple of years, but he was excellent last year for the Pirates and the Cardinals.
Yeah, he kind of reinvented himself a little bit.
Exactly. Julio Teheran, who hasn't been what he used to be at the major league level in a few years, but that's still a guy with 10 years in the big leagues who is an
Yeah.
all-star, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Julio Teheran fare pretty well in this.
Mm.
Raver San Martin is a guy in the Reds organization. I don't think he's anything special, but again, a major leaguer.
Right.
I don't know who their third starter would be. They got a bunch of
Luis
guys on there.
Patino, I think.
Oh, that's right, Luis Patino. Okay,
Yeah.
so Luis Patino for a second. I don't see him on here on this roster I'm looking at. Weird.
Maybe he didn't. Maybe he didn't commit. I was kind of going off the Sean
Yeah, I
perspective
think
roster because he hasn't put out the
no, I think Luis Patino
full
might
one
be
yet.
out.
No Luis Patino. Okay, well then
That's actually a
all right.
bummer. Well,
All right, well then I don't know who.
they don't have a ton of they don't have a ton of big leaguers. They've
John
got
Romero.
yeah. I was going to say the bullpen. They've got I think it's Yon
Is it
Romero. I'm not
Yon?
sure. Maybe I don't know. Tyrone
Yeah, we'll go with
Guerrero,
Yon.
William Cuevas. These were like depth major league guys, but they do have one guy.
Right.
Nabil Creasmont is very good on
Yes.
the Padres. He's under the radar. He's not special. He doesn't get saves, but he's a very solid pitcher, and so I think. I
He's
don't
going to
think
be
they're
their number
pitching.
one guy out of the bullpen for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. He's gonna be the first guy when they get in trouble. I don't think their pitching is anywhere close to Mexico's in the rotation or the bullpen really.
It's
But
not.
but I think it is good enough that if they can scratch out a couple of runs, they could win some games. You know what I mean? Like they're not just gonna fall apart.
Yeah,
So
this is a team that They do not have the potential to steal one from the United States, in my opinion. But
No.
they do have the potential to maybe steal one from Mexico. I don't think that's very likely, but they could.
No, I don't think it's likely either. I think this team would have looked a lot better with Solano in India, but I think even without that,
Yeah.
I would give them like a 30% chance to win against Mexico. Like, I don't think it's likely. I'm putting my money. I mean, I'm not a
Yeah.
betting man, but I'm putting my money on Mexico. But like,
Well, yeah.
if it happened, I would not be. I'd be like, wow, who, weird,
Interesting.
But I wouldn't be like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, it wouldn't be like, some of the other upsets that are possible.
Right,
But
exactly.
going to their hitting, they unfortunately their pitching is not as good as Mexico or the US. By a fairly wide margin. And they also suffer from the problem of their pitching is their strength. Their hitting is
wait.
not
They do have
great.
Mexico beat in one area. They have all the catchers that Mexico is evidently looking for.
That's true. They have
They've
4
got
catchers, and Mexico has 1.
yeah. I don't know who Gustavo Campero is, but they have Jorge Alfaro, Phillies legend,
Yeah,
who's decent, like kind of like an Austin Barnes type, a major league backup.
right,
He's kind of an athletic guy. Elias Diaz, who has shown kind of flashes with the Rockies, but I think he is what he is at this point. He's a
right,
major league backup, and Mabrys Valoria is like the ultimate depth guy. But
right.
that's 3 major leaguers.
Now, I
They've
do want to
got
mention Alfaro. From what I can tell, he seems like he crushes in like the Caribbean series. So he seems like he's the kind of guy who could go off in a tournament like this, just because he's not going to be seeing MLB pitching the entire time, or good MLB pitching. Maybe is more accurate. Against the U.S. and against Mexico, yeah, you're going to be seeing a lot of tough pitchers. But against Canada, against Britain, you'll see some pitchers that a guy like Alfaro might be able to feast on a little easier. So I wouldn't be shocked if Alfaro had a good tournament.
yeah, I think he's a decent player. He's not like a bad major leaguer. He's just not really an exceptional major leaguer. But
Right.
I like Alfaro. I think the problem is they just don't have a lot of depth on offense. They've got a lot of
Right.
fringe major league guys like Adrian Sanchez got into some games with the Nationals.
Yeah,
Dilson Herrera floated around.
Yeah.
Like
They do have a couple of guys though who are worth a look. Um, in the infield, Gio Urshela is a very good player.
yeah, he is very good, and he can play
Um,
all over, which is nice.
Yeah, he's probably their best player. I don't think that's particularly controversial. I do want to mention one of my favorite names of all time, Jolbert Cabrera, is their manager. And yeah, I realize I'm pretty sure it's pronounced Holbert, but
Holbert is just as funny.
I thought it was Jolbert when I was a kid, and I'm not changing it. But back to their hitting.
Well, wait a minute. I just want to counter you because when you said one of the greatest names of all time, I really thought you were going to go in for Tito Polo.
That is a good name as well.
That's
but
a great name.
I like Jolbert a little better
No,
for their hitting. So everybody likes Gio Urshela. Yankees fans are really kicking themselves that they basically traded Gio Urshela for nothing.
for Josh Donaldson's contract.
Yeah, they traded Gio Urshela for the privilege of paying Josh Donaldson to strike out on pitches down the middle all year and bat flip like cans of corn to center field.
Yeah, they do have one guy that doesn't get a lot of hype in the major league level, but Harold Ramirez in the outfield,
Yes.
probably a corner outfielder. He's a good player. He hits pretty well
He is.
on the Rays. He
hit the walk-off homer to win the Caribbean Series this year, right? That was him.
I don't know. But I like Harold Ramirez, man. He's a good player. And Oscar Mercado, kind of a failed prospect, isn't what everybody wanted him to be, but he's a major leaguer. You know what I mean?
The guy I wanted to bring up on the infield is Jordan Diaz. So Jordan Diaz is a prospect in, I believe, still the A's system. Let's check.
He's got an A's hat on in his picture.
Yeah, that doesn't mean anything. So he's in the A's system still. Jordan Diaz had a really good year in the minors last year. He is 22. So he seems like he's an up-and-coming prospect. The A's are good at developing prospects. They're just not good at turning that into a major league roster that's worth anything. So I like Jordan Diaz. He's probably the guy on this team that I'm going to pay the most attention to outside of maybe Urshela. But he's kind of an interesting guy that you can watch this team and have an eye towards the future. So the Tom recommendation, look to Jordan Diaz on this team. My optimistic pick for team MVP is probably Alfaro. The pragmatic part of me is like, dude, it's gonna be Urshela, but you never know.
I'll go Harold Ramirez.
Gonna go Harold Ramirez.
Yeah, I like him.
Okay.
I think he's an underrated hitter.
And yeah, for your Cy Young, I mean, you're looking at Quintana probably, maybe Chris Mott if he has a great series, and maybe Quintana struggles a little bit, which Quintana can struggle, so it's not out of the realm of possibility. But ultimately, we're looking at Colombia to finish third. They're not a bad team. They're just in the wrong pool, frankly.
No, I think they're the kind of team that if they were in the Italy, Cuba, Netherlands pool, they'd be right there with them.
Yeah, we would probably have a lot more to talk about in terms of them maybe advancing. Again, they would just run into Japan or Korea, and then it would be over. But you advance out of pool play, that's impressive, especially for a team like Colombia. Next on our list, this one, I have a bone to pick with the MLB Twitter account about this team. Canada. So Canada does have a lot of MLB talent available to them, and they have historically in this tournament. But like looking over their roster that they've put out, it's just I'm just not that impressed.
They are perennial underachievers.
Yeah, they were terrible last time, which that doesn't mean anything for this time. But they hit 155 in the tournament, and they hit 0 home runs. So this
team does not have a lot of depth.
Yeah, this team doesn't have a lot of depth, and the guys that they have are well, okay. To be fair, Bo Naylor is kind of a solid prospect. I think a lot of people like him. Well, he seems like he's got.
When we get
power.
into the offense, they have some good young players on offense. But can we just, before we get into that, talk about how much of a graveyard this pitching staff is?
Yeah, you want to start with the bad news,
dude. They're grave robbing. Like, look at.
Yeah.
Can I list you some names? Andrew Albers, born in 1985.
Yeah,
Phillies legend Philippe Aumont. John Axford is 40 years old,
and John Axford was very shaky for a long time in the major leagues. Like, you're not likely to get.
I don't want to besmirch John Axford. He was a pretty good major league player, but John Axford's 40 years old. Tom. Yeah. Adam Lowen is 39 or 38, I guess. Scott Matheson is 39, Phillies legend.
And Scott Matheson was never good even when he wasn't 39.
Like the only active major leaguers that they have that are any good, Matt Brash, I do like. He's a nice young player for the Mariners. Right. Cal Quantrill's their ace. He's pretty good. I like Cal Quantrill.
Yeah.
Rob Zastryzny was like a depth lefty guy for the Mets this year. That's it. And then they've got a couple of like young prospects. Like, I don't know who some of these people are, man, but like they've got.
I don't know who Indigo Diaz is.
Yeah, I don't know who that is.
RJ Freure.
Mitch Bratt is 19. Like, I'm sure he's got something. But like, dude, this pitching. I mean, hey, it's they'll be playing against not quite major league level competition, some of them, and it's tournament style baseball. Maybe Adam Lowen will go out there and turn some heads,
tear it up. Dude, John Axford is looking old in his picture.
Here's the problem with Canada. They're gonna have to hit to win, and they have some good players on offense, but nothing crazy. And I think that's what they need is something crazy.
Okay, so they have two great players. Freddie Freeman is an elite hitter, and Tyler O'Neill is a really good hitter.
Yeah, Tyler O'Neill's very good, and he's an excellent hitter, and he can run really well.
Yeah.
Tyler
after
O'Neill's
that, you got like Abraham Toro.
Yeah, I mean, like
Bo
you said,
Naylor, who I
yeah,
was talking about. Bo Naylor sounds like he's going to be a very good player, or at least he has a lot of potential to be a very good player.
yeah, yeah. And then
So
it's a lot of like Edouard Julien, I think is like a very well regarded prospect. Otto Lopez is kind of a pretty good young prospect. Jared Young got a cup of coffee with the Cubs.
right,
I think Owen
he got
Casey's a pretty
as Trev called it on John Boy on Talking Baseball. He called it he got a drink.
I like that.
He was like, "Yeah, that guy got a drink last year," and I was like, "Stolen. I'll be keeping that."
He got another cup of coffee guy, Jacob Robson, Australian
Yeah,
Baseball League legend, Jacob Robson. Denzel Clark, I think, is a pretty good prospect. Owen Casey's a pretty good prospect. I don't think this is a bad team by any means. I just don't think it's a particularly good team. And I'll give you a sneak peek. I don't know if we're actually going to do this, but on my break at work today, I sat down and just looked through all the pool play games, so like the first round games, and I just
right.
picked a winner for each one. I have Canada going 0-4. I have Canada
So,
losing to I have
so
Canada losing to Great Britain.
you got Canada going back to qualifiers.
I have Canada going back to
That's
qualifiers.
rough.
That is admittedly, I think, a hot take. I think a lot of people
Yeah,
would pick Canada over Great Britain. But here's my thinking. I think Great Britain, and we'll get into them with Russell, obviously, but
right.
I think Great Britain kind of has a Canada level offense. Like Trace Thompson's a decent. I mean, obviously they don't have anything to rival with Freddie Freeman, but like Trace Thompson's a decent player. And then
Yeah,
they've got some young guys who can hit, and they've got Harry Ford who has been excellent.
yeah.
I don't know. I kind of like. I don't know what I'm just like. I think they're in the same boat where like I'd give Great Britain like a 35-40% chance to win that game against Canada. Like I don't think they're favored. I don't know. I'm going with my gut here, and I hate when people go with feelings with baseball because I think it's silly most of the time. But
Yeah.
that's what we're supposed to do on our show. So I'm gonna go for it. I just think Canada continues to underperform. They always underperform. I like Canada. I don't have anything against them. I wore a Canada hoodie in our Russell interview. I
That's
have nothing
true.
against Canada. Nothing wrong with it. I'd love to see them do well too because I think they're fun. I don't see it happening, man. I don't know why.
Yeah,
I don't.
they're a deeply unimpressive roster. And I think
Yeah.
what bothers me about it so much is I feel like I know that Canada can do better.
Oh, dude, if they wanted to, they lost Nick Pivetta. Vlad Guerrero Jr. was always a long shot, but theoretically, he could have. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Even Joey
Canada,
Votto. I mean, I know that
right?
Votto has issues with the World Baseball Classic. And also, I think,
He's
isn't he
also
hurt
hurt.
right now?
Yeah, he's coming
Yeah.
off of surgery.
So,
Um,
but like, you know that he could.
yeah,
And
like even
even,
like
even,
Charles LeBlanc was
yeah,
like
even
he was good on
ancient
the
Votto
Marlins.
is going to be better than almost everybody on this roster.
Yeah, absolutely. And they definitely had some more pitching that they would be able to get. Like I said, Pivetta,
Yeah.
Rowan Wick, Jamison Tyone. If Canada got all their guys, I would like them a lot. I think they would.
Yeah. They
They
would
would. I
actually,
would have them ahead of Colombia. I think they would be able to handle Mexico. I don't know if they would win, but I think they would be able to hang in there
yeah.
with them. But obviously, that didn't come to
Yeah,
pass.
they would be the third best team, and they would be close to Mexico. I don't think they would beat them, like you said, but
Right.
right now, if Canada plays Mexico, Mexico has almost an 100% chance of winning,
Yeah,
which is
I think
really sad.
if I'm Canada, my plan here is, if I'm Canada, I'm going in thinking I'm going to beat Great Britain. I'm going in thinking
Yeah,
I can beat Colombia. If I'm Canada, I know I'm going to lose against the U.S., so I'm throwing Cal Quantrill against Mexico and hoping that I can sneak one out and move on. Which again, if
right.
that happened, I wouldn't be completely flabbergasted. Like it would, you know what I mean? That's tournament baseball. It could happen if Cal Quantrill shuts them down and they get 3 or 4 runs. Then all
Yeah.
you got to do is beat Colombia and Great Britain. It would be cool. It'd be cool, man. Like I like Canada. I don't have anything against them.
Now, I am rooting against that because I think that would make for a really stupid semifinal game
Yeah, it would be lame.
where
It'd be a cool
what the
story though.
Dominican Republic just walks to the finals because they get to play against
Yeah,
no, they walk to the semifinals because they get to play against Canada, and
yeah,
then the
yeah,
U.S. has to play probably Venezuela.
yeah. Whoever finishes second in that.
Yeah.
Although here is my thing though, and I'm trying to like will this into existence, and this is also why I want Great Britain to win.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is all a moot point if they expand. If they expand the tournament again, then I'm assuming everybody's requalified again. But let's act on the assumption they don't do that. If they don't expand again, then the team that finishes last in each pool will have to requalify. And if Great Britain does that, Great Britain was kind of on a knife's edge when they qualified this time, right? Like that game could have gone either way, and then who knows when they face Czech Republic and all that. And I think Great Britain, kind of the stars aligned. They got Vance Worley and they got Harry Ford and stuff, and I don't think that will happen in the next qualifier. And obviously, who knows what's going to happen? There could be an English superstar coming up. Like I have no idea. But here's my thing though. If Great Britain gets sent back to the qualifiers, I think there's a not insignificant chance that they don't qualify again, which I don't want to see happen because it's a great story. I like Great Britain. I want them to do well, and I want Gabriel Rincones to play in the World Baseball Classic next time.
Yeah, I think, and if Great Britain doesn't have to go back to qualifiers, like if Britain wins any games in this tournament, Britain and the Czech Republic both have this going for them, where if they win any games in this tournament and they don't have to go back to qualifiers, that's like by default the biggest moment in European baseball history.
That is more than you could ask for, because I think realistically you're going in looking at 0-4 for Great Britain and hoping you can go 1-3.
Yeah, and if they do go 1-3, we know that Jazz Chisholm wanted to play.
Yeah,
and it seems like he just backed out because the center field job opened up, and
I think the Marlins also had the right to block him because he spent, I think, it was 60 days or more on the IL.
He was on the IL for a long time.
Yeah, I think they had the right to block him, so they probably sat him down and were like, "Look, you're learning a new position, and you were hurt," and he was like, "All right."
Yeah,
that's Canada. I have him going 0-4. What do you think, Tom? Are you assuming you're going 1-3?
I don't know. I don't think they're worse than Great Britain, but I
don't think that either.
A lot closer than it should be, frankly.
I don't think they're worse than Great Britain.
Great Britain was leaning on having Jazz Chisholm. They would be a lot better with Rincones also, but he's another guy who I think got held back for injuries. I think I think we'll discuss that with Russell. If they had those two, Great Britain would be better than Canada. I don't think it would be, out of the realm of possibility to say that.
Josh Naylor was another huge loss.
Yes, that too.
That was a bad one, man.
So looking at this Canada team, I'm not confident that they don't go 0-4, frankly. Like if Quantrill doesn't show up, like if he has, if he's in like a dead arm or whatever and he has a bad tournament, they will probably go 0-4 unless
I don't
Freeman
even think it's
just
that.
kills it.
I don't even think it's that because I don't think they're throwing Quantrill because I don't like the only game that I think you can realistically peg Canada to win is Great Britain. I mean, obviously they could beat Colombia. That's not really that crazy of a take, but I like Colombia better. And you look at Canada and you go, okay, they can beat Great Britain, but I don't think they're going to be throwing Quantrill against them because that would be just punting the rest of the games. I think they're going to line Quantrill up to pitch against the U.S. or Mexico. So if you're not throwing Quantrill against Great Britain, I don't know who else they start. Matt Brash, they said he could be a starter, but they said he's going to relieve. So
I was going to say, isn't Brash not really stretched out?
Yeah, I don't know who they have. Andrew Albers started in the major leagues. He's 37 years old. What do you do here? Adam Lowen? I mean, they might have a minor leaguer that I don't know about, but this is not good.
Yeah. Well,
if you're Great Britain and you throw Vance Worley out there against Canada, I don't think that's that crazy to think you might be able to win.
Yeah, that's a winnable game for sure. You know what? I think that the brave take is to say Canada 0-4. I might be willing to get on board with that, though, because I'm just not confident in this Canada roster at all. I think they have – it's not even that they're putting out fringe guys. It's they're putting out fringe guys who are old.
Yeah, fringe guys from 10 years ago.
Yeah, they're putting out guys who were fringy when, the Royals were in the World Series, So, yeah, Canada, not great. They're also just there's a lot less excitement there. Like Britain has some prospects that we'll talk about. Harry Ford is one of the best prospects in the game. They have that guy Matt Koperniak. I think is that his
Yeah.
name? Yeah, I
Yep.
mean, there's a couple other guys who Russell will bring up. And we should get to that. But like Great Britain is a lot more exciting than Canada. Canada seems to me like a team that just didn't really try, and that kind of bums me out.
No, I don't think it's that. I think they just got torpedoed by decommitments and injuries. I mean, I think Canada would love to have Pavetta and Votto and Josh Naylor and Vlad Guerrero Jr. and stuff. And I think it
Right.
just,
But it strikes me like was it the 2009 US team? Like we knew that the US could put out so much better of a team. And then you go out there and it's like Mark DeRosa,
I don't
Jimmy
think that's fair,
Rollins.
though. I don't. I want to stick up for Canada here, though. I don't think that's fair because when you look at the U.S., you go every single major leaguer that it wasn't born abroad is eligible. So like
Right.
the replacement level is all stars, and yet
Yeah.
you're throwing Mark DeRosa out there and stuff. When Canada, when you look at it and you go, oh man, Josh Naylor decommitted. Like I don't know who your first baseman is. It's some minor leaguer. Like they don't have a whole major league roster to fill in with. So it really is like Nick Pavetta pulls out, and then I don't know who your other starter. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
it is
maybe.
a shame because like it is a bummer to see them rolling John Axford out there. But it's like John Axford did pitch in the majors in 2021. Like
Right.
he's kind of a legend of Canadian baseball. You might as well roll him out there instead of some AA guy. You know what I mean? Like why not?
Yeah.
Like I feel for Canada. I'm sure whoever put the roster together would have loved to have Pavetta and all those guys, and it just
Right.
didn't happen. It's
So-
a shame.
So the bone I have to pick is the World Baseball Classic Twitter account, which is MLB.com run. They put out their team rankings, and Canada's 8th.
Yeah, that is inexcusable.
Like Korea is 10th, Italy is 9th. Like Italy has more like usable major leaguers than Canada does.
I don't understand. I don't understand. And like Korea, come on, like Korea's a good team. Like,
Yeah,
what are we doing
like
here?
maybe I mean Freeman's probably better than anybody on Korea unless it was a Jung Ho Lee, unless he's just a stud when he comes over to the MLB, but he is not here yet. Still a great player, but it would be a really hot take to say he's better than Freeman.
Yeah, I don't feel confident.
So Freeman would be better than anybody on the Korean team, but like the floor on the Korean team is a lot higher than the floor on the Canada team.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
There has been some really bad World Baseball Classic takes lately.
Yeah, I think that Canada's getting a lot of credit because they have been good in the past, and I think they've overperformed a little bit at times. Like I think they made it. I think they kind of gave the U.S. a run for their money in not the past one. What 2013?
Maybe they got in that brawl, which was cool.
Yeah, like they have been good, and they can put good players out there. So I think that's why Canada might be getting a little bit of extra street cred. But you look at the guys they're putting out there, as we've beaten to death now, they're not that good, and frankly, I look at them and I kind of go like this.
I despise him.
Yep, pretty much.
That's a lot of what I have to say about Canada's roster. But anyway, let's
we've beaten Canada to death. Let's kick it over.
We
to our
really should have
interview
only
with
talked
Russell.
about Canada.
For 5 minutes.
So let's let's go to Russell.
Yeah, here's our interview with Russell about Team GB. I hope you enjoy it, and we'll see you on the other side.
Welcome back to the Baseball Podcast. We're here with our guest today. We have a special guest. Not a lot of people are out there becoming experts on Team Great Britain, but you know what? We found arguably the foremost among them, I would say. Many would say, not just me. This is Russell Eassom. That's how you say it, right?
Yep, you got it in
Russell
one.
Eassom. So, Russell, tell us a little bit about yourself. You are from the United Kingdom, right? You're from Britain. Where are you from in Britain?
So yeah, I'm located in London. If any of you are followers of the English Premier League. I live right next to Emirates Stadium. It's literally about Arsenal's pitch is literally about 100 meters behind my flat. So that's where I'm based in London. I'm a country boy originally from a place called Shropshire, which I would guess a vast majority of your listeners will have no idea where it is. And that's probably right. You shouldn't know where it is. Nothing happens there.
Yeah, I'm guessing 75% of our listeners, which is 6 people, probably don't know where that is. We probably have at least one listener who doesn't know where London is. So, that's kind of what happens when you live in America. Everybody has to worry about where you are. This is I would call it our cross to bear, frankly. But okay, so for those who don't know, baseball and Great Britain are not exactly fast friends, or at least they haven't been. So as a person from Great Britain who is into baseball, how did this come about? How did you guys meet?
So baseball for me is something that I watched a little bit when I was younger, because in the UK there used to be a program called MLB on 5, which was like the Channel 5, and they used to show 1 or 2 games a week at like 3 o'clock in the morning UK time.
Oh yeah.
My dad has traveled quite a bit in his career, and he picked up a load of sports that he liked to watch. So he would record a game, and then would watch it over the week, like half an hour at a time, whatever his like allocated TV slot was in the evening when my mum or my sister didn't have control of the TV. He would watch like half an hour of baseball. And so I kind of watched a bit of baseball at that time. We're talking kind of like late 90s, kind of into the early 2000s. I watched a little bit here or there, so I kind of had a rough idea of it was. But I kind of didn't really follow it much of it on afterwards. It wasn't until we're talking like 2012 when I started to actually really get into baseball. I love sport. I played rugby for most of my life. That's probably the main sport that I watch. But being British, I kind of have West Brom as the football team I support, and kind of did all of that stuff. I got really pissed off with football. It was kind of, to me, it was the time when it was just cheating, was just what everybody was doing. It was the diving. It was Luis Suarez at his prime, if you were biting and everything. And I got really knocked off. And so I was like, you know what? I want to find another sport to kind of enjoy. And thankfully MLB TV existed, and it was literally about £100 you could watch all MLB games, because in the UK there's no blackouts on MLB TV.
Oh dude,
there's no local channel that's carrying it, so effectively for much cheaper than what to be able to watch any other sport that you could just watch every single game whenever you want. And so yeah, that just kind of ticked in. And also, I'm a pretty analytical person for what I do for my day job. So baseball fairly quickly kind of scratched a sport that I wanted to watch and like the analytical side. And it's a 10-year love affair since then.
How bummed out I am to hear that it's cheaper and easier to watch baseball in Great Britain than it is to watch the Phillies in Philadelphia.
Yeah, but I guess
we have MLB TV.
It might be the same for you guys to watch like the Premier League, like in the UK.
Maybe
in the UK, you've got to watch. Yeah. You've got to have 4 different subscriptions if you want to be able to watch every game.
Oh, so, okay. All right. Then you know what? Yeah, it's kind of a turnabout as fair play thing, I guess. So it's good to hear that the blackout issue is not exclusive to MLB, much like how teams having a cheating problem is not exclusive to the Premier League.
Oh, no.
So, MLB though, I would never accuse MLB of having a cheating problem. Far from it. But okay, so we're here to talk about the World Baseball Classic, right?
Yep.
Obviously, you might have a favorite MLB team, but I'd be willing to bet that your current favorite baseball team is probably the Great Britain team. Is it a bold prediction?
No, I think it's a reasonable one. Like the qualifying tournament that GB had to go through to this, they ended up effectively winning a game 10-9 in extras against Spain to qualify. And watching that game, I think that was the most excited I've ever been, like watching a game, because there was a lot on the line for GB. This is now the first time that GB's ever qualified for the World Baseball Classic, so it's a massive for sport. Not only for like the team and representing ourselves, but for sport in this country as well. So kind of what was on the line watching that match. I am a Guardians fan, and I will admit that that was probably more important than watching Game 7 in 2016 because it's just. But for me, it's like that's 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'm watching that with like 3 people in a casino in London because that was the only place that was showing the game at like 4 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
And I could go watch with a couple of friends. Mm-hmm. Whereas the Team GB one, I've got like 15, 20 friends who are all messaging, chatting about it as it's going on, kind of going, oh my God, this is amazing. So it just had that kind of level of excitement. And some additional things, it's like, yeah, I know some of the people who are on the coaching staff. So I've met some of the people on the teams before. So it's like I have an attachment to those players that you just don't have when you watch generally a professional sports team. You just don't have that same level of attachment.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine in 2016, you didn't have that bond with like Rajay Davis that you do with maybe some of these British coaches and players.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the team a little bit because this is one of the lesser known teams in the entire tournament, frankly. I mean, the only lesser known team is probably the Czech Republic. But that doesn't mean that people aren't going to know some of the names on there, for sure. So one of the guys that, I think a lot of people know about, or anybody who's like into baseball as much as we are, they're going to know about Harry Ford, a.k.a. Harrison Ford, a.k.a. Han Solo. He's the best player on the roster, right? That's not like a hot take.
So you've got a couple of players that are like, you've got Trace Thompson, who obviously is a kind of fourth outfielder, maybe, but for the Dodgers, and you've got like Inkibit, who's a relief pitcher who's actually for the Reds. But yeah, like Harrison Ford is a high level prospect who has a lot of people watching kind of what he's going to do next. He was probably player of the qualifying tournament. He came out, was catcher, was hitting number one, hit bombs, hit dingers, like did everything that we thought he could do and more. And to do that when being 19 years old and kind of having a lot of pressure maybe on you, because the way that MLB's coverage of the qualifiers was pretty much like, here are the prospects that are taking part in this tournament because they're the only players that no major league players could take part because it was in September last year. So they were playing. So effectively it was prospects that are allowed to go and people who are playing in other areas, some independent ball. In that regard. So yeah, he was almost like the face of the tournament with like Noviel Marte, who was playing for Spain. So, yeah,
I was going to mention that him and Marte were kind of getting a lot of the attention during that set of qualifiers for sure.
Yeah, so yeah, he just kind of did everything that kind of we wanted to do. As a British fan, you wanted him to do and more. So yeah, it was phenomenal. Yeah, there are also a few other names that people might recognize. I think obviously Vance Worley is going to be somebody that
Phillies fan, definitely.
Phillies legend.
Yeah, the Vanimal himself is something that you might not know who's going to be there. And yeah, there's a couple of other names. Pretty much like half of these players are in like the prospect systems in places they're just not high valued, and the other half are people who are playing in independent ball right now who have maybe kind of had their little chance in the affiliated ball and not made it. And then you've got Tyler Vizza, who's like a CPBL like pitcher in Tawan. So yeah, you've got a very disparate set of kind of like talent that people won't necessarily know. But I think you're always surprised how well somebody who's actually like in AA or even in independent ball can play. Like, yes, there is a difference between major league players and these guys, but sometimes I think it's consistency more than actual ability.
Right. Well, and also, I mean, it less so in Pool C because Pool C is pretty loaded comparatively. But on the world stage like this, like a guy who washed out of the majors after 1 year still might be a really good player on the world stage. Like, he's never going to make the United States team. He's probably never going to make the DR. But, a guy like that, like you look at some of the guys who were on Team Spain who were like feared in the qualifiers, who nobody knows who they are. Like, I mean, obviously Angel Beltre is one of the greatest players of all time. But the only guy that anybody was really seriously talking about on Spain was Noelvi Marte. But like, some of these just washouts, even guys who washed out of the minors were like tearing it up in qualifiers for Spain. So, on the world stage, like it doesn't have to be major league players to impress a little bit. One of the guys I wanted to bring up, I was doing some reading. Evidently, this guy, Matt Koperniak,
Yep.
it looks like he has been pretty good in the minors so far. He was a good college player. He is a guy who I'm seeing him be talked about as somebody with potential for sure. He's not on the level of Harry Ford, but that's because Harry Ford is like an elite prospect, frankly. But having guys like this on your team, again, it kind of like how you were saying in the qualifiers, it's an opportunity to see guys like this maybe a little bit earlier than you otherwise would. So
Yeah.
I was looking at Matt Koperniak as somebody to watch.
Yeah, I think definitely. Like I think he hit like 288 in AA last year and had like an 800 OPS. So he was obviously a good enough hitter for AA. I think they sent him up for like a very few at bats in AAA next year, and he's somebody I imagine will be in the AAA system for the Cardinals going forward. And hey, you never know, like. The Cardinals always have that devil magic of that random player that comes up that nobody was ever anticipating them to be any good, and he's got some skills and capabilities to do that. So yeah, he's another one of those you want to look out and be like, okay, like this guy could hit and has probably at some point kind of faced some people who are top level players, and so can actually has a chance at maybe facing that high speed, because yeah, that's what you've got to do to work your way up through the system nowadays in Major League Baseball.
Right. And, I think a lot of people, especially people who don't, keep up with the minors, which frankly, even a lot of like dedicated baseball fans don't. And the way that teams run their minor league systems is kind of like constantly evolving. Like when I was like first getting into baseball, AA was just a level below AAA. Nowadays, this isn't particularly new, but nowadays I think that AA is more like for the prospects, and then a lot of the time AAA ends up being, kind of just depth and like roster filler. So seeing guys succeed at AA sometimes means more to me than, how I think he might do at AAA, just because a lot of the time I feel like AAA is just like, oh, these are the guys on our 40-man roster. They're not good and they're all 28, but they'll come up if somebody gets hurt. And then in the minor or in AA, it's everybody's best prospect. So seeing guys succeed in AA, to me that means that maybe the future is. You know what? I would say that I think the future is bright for this guy. He seems like he's pretty good.
When you look over this roster, there are some recognizable names too. Big MLB fans, guys like Philly's great Darnell Sweeney, who got some cups of coffee, and obviously Vance Worley. What do you think overall are the strengths, and what do you think are the biggest weaknesses of Team GB?
So I think the strength is, this is going to be a weird one, is actually like the rules that exist in the WBC. So the WBC has like strange rules basically because of when it is, and it's trying to work in participation with MLB. So in the first round, pitchers can only 65 pitches max. There are rules that if you pitch more than 30 pitches, you can't pitch like the next day as a reliever. Like the way that GB got through the qualifying tournament was Drew Spencer, who's the coach, and like his other like staff, they kind of really worked out who's going to pitch where, how we're going to manage all of this and do that. They know that they do not have the best pitching lineup. They know that they kind of like, they don't have that kind of star number one. Like they've got a couple of players in Vizor and Worley who you'd expect to do reasonably well, but they don't kind of have just that name that quite a lot of the other teams, even the ones that maybe aren't that great, have like one major league starter who's out there who could kind of like give them that inning. But I think GB are very aware of how this system works because they've been through the qualifiers, they've done it, they know how to use their players and pick and choose when to use them to kind of get what they need out of it. So if things go well, or even if they don't go well, I think GB can actually understand that quite well. I think also they were a very aggressive base running team in the qualifying tournament. Like Anthony Seymour, he had 5 steals and no other player had more than 1 steal in the tournament. So like he was he was batting ninth, but effectively when he got on base over like 50% of the time, and then was at second or third by the time of the end of Harry Ford's at bat, who then usually drove him in. So they were very aggressive, kind of like when they got on the base and kind of really pushing those guys over to make sure that they would get the chance to be driven in by the people that they trust to kind of get them into those spots. So I would be surprised if GB don't take a kind of similar approach during this tournament. I think it's not necessarily going to catch out some of these other teams, because they've got to have done their research as well and seen that like GB are going to do this, not to discredit like what USA or Canada or everything would do, but they're still going to research the team that is potentially like the worst in the group. They're still going to make sure that they don't mess up against lots of teams. So yeah, and then you are just kind of saying like you have a lot of, with the bats, it's just those questions. It is like, yes, Trace Thompson, yes, like Darryl Sweeney, yes, kind of like Lucius Fox, they've seen at bats at kind of like the top level. So you can go like, you know what, although you're not top caliber players, like I still think that you could go up against most of the pitching staffs that you're going to get in the WBC, because I think with the exception of like Japan and Korea, most teams don't actually have their best pitchers because because of where it is coming into the season. So you don't think that they're the issue. I think the bottom of the order could be an issue for GB, whether you're just going to like, are they going to be able to put bat on ball well enough to do that? It's just what they look to do. Do they just look to put the ball in play and see what happens? Or do they have like a few guys? They've got a couple of guys that are power, but I kind of see this team more to be, we're just going to put the ball in play and we're going to try and cause havoc on the base paths.
I do want to ask you about a couple of guys that aren't on the team. If you, I don't know if you have any information, but we had Gabriel Rincones on our show, and he said that he was, obviously he's a highly touted prospect. I think he's number 7 in the Philly system. He's a 3rd round pick. And he said he was in. He said he was on their 50-man roster. He talked to Drew Spencer, and he said he was willing to DH. And I don't know what happened. Do you know if maybe the Phillies blocked it, if he was still hurt, or if GB just said, hey, we're going to go in a different direction. Thanks anyway.
Yeah, so I think from what we there's no definitive answer that we kind of got given, but kind of I think what was insinuated was effectively he was held back because he was injured.
Right.
Basically, like they had the right basically to just say no, and they kind of decided that his progression hadn't come along enough for them to actually allow him to participate in the tournament. I think GB don't want to burn that bridge now. Like he is a player that is going to be a part of this team for 10, 12, 15 years or whatever, thinking of what his age is and where his level of potential could take him. Like, I just don't think they want to burn that bridge right now.
Yeah, I mean,
that makes sense. That makes sense. I do want to ask you about something else, sort of unrelated, but I've heard talk about this, and I want to say you brought it up. I listened to your interview with Anthony Seymour, which was really interesting. And you talked about, and I've heard other people talk about this idea of a Bahamian national team.
Yep.
And sort of taking that away from Team Great Britain. And there's a lot of examples of like Curacao playing for the Netherlands, that kind of thing. Do you think that could happen anytime soon? And if you do, how bad is that for Great Britain baseball? Selfishly, you know?
I think it's going to happen. I still think it's probably 5-10 years away. Like effectively the Bahamian National Board, when I was speaking to Anthony and what I've spoken to a couple of other players, it isn't really there as a functioning like organization really yet. They've just about getting like their own national field back up and running. So it's going to do that. In all of that, like if you then jump out and you create your own team, you then kind of go to the bottom of all of the rankings and have got to like work your way back up. So it's probably in the best interest of both the countries to kind of push the GB team for a while and then at some point kind of like split it off and go where it is. Yeah, like it would be an impact to this GB team. There's, I want to say 9 like players on this team who are of Bahamian descent, and 2 of the coaches also of Bahamian descent. So that's kind of would affect. And obviously there are others that aren't in the squad that have similar things. It would be the same with Jamaica. It would be the same with Trinidad and Tobago. Like these are all places where the British heritage comes into them being allowed to represent GB. But Bahamas is the one that is the furthest or is the closest to kind of having their own system. And I think everybody in GB baseball would, if we're perfectly honest, we'd love for the Bahamas to be able to to set out with their own team and their own development, because it's kind of shown that it's something that we've been able to do as kind of having like GB baseball. It probably would have taken a lot longer if it had not been part of like this system.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it. It's interesting too, because I think they're like, I've never heard anybody say that about the Netherlands. Like, I've heard people say, "Oh, Curacao should be its own thing," but I've never heard anybody say, "Well, we want Curacao to develop and be its own thing." So I think that's nice that, it's sort of a rising tide lifts all ships kind of thing, But anyway, I sort of got us off topic. Going back to the team, what are your predictions for Team GB, and how do you think they're going to fare?
Yeah, it's a very difficult one here to kind of go with the patriotic heart and the kind of like the the level head that could kind of go with it. I think I've got to be brutally honest and go, obviously this is the weakest team in the group. I don't think there's like, I can't like pussyfoot around and kind of say otherwise. Like, we are definitely like the lowest ranked seed in this group. And yeah, I think you said it earlier, this is a powerhouse group. I think if GB had got been the bottom seed in one of the other groups, I think we would have stood a chance against like maybe one or two of the teams in the other groups. But this is the difficult one. I think the game that they've got to go for is the game against Canada. I generally think that like that is like the weakest out of the other four teams. I think.
Yeah, I agree.
They've lost Pavetta as well recently, so they're kind of left with Quantrill from a big starting kind of point of view. And obviously, there's no doubting that Freddie Freeman is a star, but if you look at the rest of that kind of projected starting lineup compared to the projected starting lineup of Colombia, Mexico, and the USA, I don't think they're gonna be doing particularly well. So you've really got to go for that one game. Like, obviously, I think the team and the squad, they're not going to be playing for one game. They're going to be playing they want to get to the semis. They want to push and show as good as well as they can do. But I do feel that they have to probably put all of their energy towards that game against Canada, because one win in this tournament, you're qualified to the next one, basically. If you don't finish bottom of your group, you're automatically qualified for the World Baseball Classic in 3 years' time, which for a team like GB, and just for baseball in the UK as a whole, they'll get more money, more funding from like the government sports kind of systems that works here. So them automatically being qualified for that will be fantastic. There's still systems that exist in the UK that fund things where around like the Olympics, and there's still talks about the fact that in 2028 the Olympics will be in LA, and they may want to bring back baseball because, well, it's in America, so they might want to try and bring it back for the Olympics. So there's still talk of even getting funding via like the Olympic system in the UK. Well, that's still an option. So if the team is participating and qualified for an major international tournament for it, then yeah, we'll get more money for baseball in this country, which will be useful for the people who are playing week in, week out, as well as obviously useful for the international team. But if I'm honest, it's gonna be a struggle. Like I like the heart says we could get that one win. I think the head says probably not, sadly.
Right. Yeah, I think if GB managed to hold on to Jazz Chisholm, it would be a lot different, because I think then they have that star who can match the Freddie Freeman. And I mean, does Canada still have Tyler O'Neill? They didn't lose him, did they?
I believe he's still playing. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, like, but even still, like, Jazz Chisholm's a really good player. If he was playing in this tournament, I think that GB has a realistic shot of upsetting Canada, and they still can. But like, yeah, it's a little bit of a reach for them. I would say it's about the same as when we talked about Pool B. I think that the Czech team has a shot at upsetting Australia. But in both cases, it would be like that would be the biggest win in that team's history. If the Czechs beat Australia, or if the British beat Canada, like that, those are huge wins for those organizations. So, I mean, I assume that Britain is probably going to be saving their best for that game against Canada.
I would think so. I kind of obviously kind of like for your pitching wise, like it's like Beasley or Wally, I think would be your two starters to go. I imagine one will go against the US and the other one will go against Canada. Like you kind of got to push that and kind of you can't really not, if you drop either of them from playing that first game, you're kind of giving up the game against the US, I think. And I don't think,
Right.
I just don't think they can do it. Like, I think there's just enough kind of like patrioticness between like GB
Right.
and UK that
Right.
like, you've got to give that game the whole hog. We've got to try and be the Saudi Arabia of the World Cup, beating Argentina, like
Right.
in the first game. But like, I see those sorts of odds, like that sort of level of like difference in the team where you never know what could happen. But yeah, it's a pretty high end, high odds for this to make even be possible.
One of the things that I like to ask everybody that we have on to talk about, the various teams, looking at Team GB, who is your MVP and who is your Cy Young for this team?
So MVP, like I'm torn because I love Anthony Seymour. Like Ethan, you kind of listened to probably the chat that I had with him. Like the man's a dude. The man's like fantastic. Kind of like it's really interesting for him to talk about like, oh, when he was in affiliate system, he was told to just hit the ball on the ground and hit the ball in play, and now he's like, oh, that's completely nearly garbage. Like I should have been taught to like hit the ball in the air, and just seeing his career like progress back up through like the independents. I'd just love for him to have like an amazing kind of like tournament, and maybe somebody would to put him into an affiliate system to go through there. So yeah, I'll go with Anthony Seymour. I think he'll be starting center fielder. He might be batting like 8 or 9, but like he's just going to be speed and entertainment for that whole entire tournament. So yeah, we'll go with that.
Brave take for the MVP. I expected Harry Ford, but you know what? I like the non-obvious take.
Yeah, and probably pitching wise, I think Tyler Vizzer is probably is the go-to guy. I think the fact that he has been pitching in like the CPBL in Taiwan and has been pitching at a highly competitive level. Like, do I think that Vance is potentially like a better overall pitcher? Probably. I think Tyler's just had the more kind of like high level game experience recently, which I think will just kind of push him to be just a little bit better.
Right.
No love for Ian Jibbo. He's built like me throwing baseballs.
Yeah, like always with the use of relievers, it's just how they use them during the tournament, because you know that like you can get 2, maybe 3 games out of them in that group, depending on how much you use them or don't use them during that tournament. So, and any shutdown inning that anybody can provide from that bullpen is going to be like ridiculous. Like that's just, they know that like they're going to have to use, they're probably going to piggyback starters or the longer relief guys in to start games, and then try and get 4 innings at the end off the bullpen every single day. So yeah, you're going to see guys like Michael Peterson, who's in the minor system, who can touch hundreds at times, like see how well like he'll do. Obviously the other one to slightly talk about is Michael Roth. I've got to say he's been basically in pretty much every qualifying team that GB has had for like all of the tournaments the last 3 times we tried to qualify, and now he's kind of done it again. He is kind of like he's not like the elder statesman of the team, because there are players that are older than him, but he's like that dude who's been in the GB squad for 12 years and has finally now got like the opportunity to play at the World Baseball Classic.
Right, he's the veteran.
Yeah. He's the GB veteran. Yeah,
he's the Clint Eastwood of Team GB.
Yeah, former big leaguer, right? Him and Chris Reed, right?
Yeah, they all had their cup of coffee.
So I'll ask you this. This is the last question I got. Is there anybody under the radar that you like, that you think could really make some noise that people aren't talking about?
So, Alex Crosby and Deshaun Knowles are 2 of like the outfielders who probably one of them might DH and hit. Like those guys have Crosby himself has got a pretty powerful bat from kind of what we've seen and what he's done in his independent league. I'd be awesome to see if he could like tee off against a couple of guys that are of a major league caliber to do that. Obviously, from the pitching wise, like people like Akil Morris and like Mackenzie Mills, they're still young, like 23, 27. Like they've still got opportunities to, if they light it up in a tournament, like those guys can actually do something. And so it'll be amazing to see if it happens. But like they're kind of like towards like that middling point of the career where you got to make that decision of like, well, actually, is this the end?
Right. One guy I like is Nick Ward. He was really good in the ABL, and he's a good independent ball guy. I think he just kind of never got the chance in the minors. I don't know, but
Yeah, and if you want to, if you kind of look at the GB team, it is a lot of that guys who got some single A, some double A, and are now kind of doing well in independent ball, and
Right.
they all
Justin
still,
Wiley.
Yeah, I spoke to Justin Wiley for a pod that we're putting out, like, you know, on Backflips and Nerds in a bit, and he's the same. Like he still thoroughly believes that he's got the ability to play at like the major league level. Like, and he's a guy who kind of didn't even get like drafted, but has like played in the Frontier League and is absolutely breaking it in the Frontier League like last year. So he still kind of believes that like he just needs the opportunity to have the moment to showcase it. So yeah. There are guys that are dreaming of being the next Peter Moylan,
right?
from 2006. So
yeah,
so it sounds like there's
springboard.
There's some hidden talent on this Great Britain team, but I think a lot of people are going to overlook them just because, you know, yeah, if we're being honest, they are not the favorites to do much in this tournament, but you know, come next time around, if they do manage to bring in Jazz Chisholm and, you know, maybe some of these other players improve, you know, you're looking at a team that has a pretty good chance of maybe even dethroning Canada if they end up in the same pool, which I don't think is a guarantee at all. But I mean, Canada in the previous World Baseball Classic played like they should have been relegated. So there's potential for Great Britain to move up there if they get the chance. So I guess that, you know, guys, watch Team Great Britain. Keep an eye on some of the people we've talked about, and I think you're going to see some talent that maybe you didn't know was coming.
Yep, looking forward to that Russell, first game against Team USA.
Russell, thanks for coming on. This has been a lot of fun, man. I appreciate it, and I appreciate you putting up with my technical difficulties. What's the best place to find you, Batflips and Nerds?
Yeah, so you can find us at Batflips_nerds on Twitter. That's where you'll kind of find our podcasts and our semi-drivel / entertainment that we do. Right. We also have a website, batflipsandnerds.com, which is pretty much all British people kind of like blogging about baseball. We try to have like a correspondent for all of the different teams to kind of just give a different perspective on baseball. Yeah, so that's where you can find us.
All right.
How about you in particular? You deserve some love. How about you?
I'm R Eassom on Twitter. Yeah, that'll mainly be statistical takes. If you follow me with the occasional "why are people doing things?"
That sounds good to awesome. Me. I like statistics.
Is there anything we didn't touch on that you wanted to talk about real fast?
No, I don't think so. I think it's a good coverage. Like in all of this, it's like there are players that aren't in this tournament that you haven't mentioned, and I can't mention to you guys because we've been told like not to mention it. But I can say there's at least 4 major league players who are not playing in this tournament who could have if the clubs.
Can I take a shot at 2 of them?
Yeah,
the Naylor brothers and Tristan McKenzie.
So I can't say no.
Okay. All right. We'll end it on that. Hey, thanks a lot, man. You've been great. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Russell.
Let's do this again.
Yeah, cheers, man.
Russell, thanks for coming on. That was a blast. I definitely learned a lot about Team Great Britain, Tom, and I feel more confident about Team Great Britain heading in. I thought they were kind of a Cinderella story to get in, and then they were just happy to be here. Like I said earlier, I see them sneaking out a win against Canada now. I see them as not a complete, team to be steamrolled.
Right. Yeah, they're not trash by any means. I think what they're playing for is to avoid qualifiers, and they're trying to play to show guys like Chisholm. And if I am confident that Rincone is going to be a good player in 3-4 years, I think he's going to be a real asset for that team down the road. If it works out for him to play for them, and if they don't have to go back to qualifiers, I think that's a lot bigger incentive for some of those better players to show up.
I think
that's what they're playing for.
I think Russell nailed it when he talked about sort of using this tournament to lay the groundwork of saying, look, if we get in and we make a run of it, I mean, which they already did to get in, and he basically was like, if we can solidify our spot in the next tournament, then you got 3 years to lay the groundwork and get a guy like Tristan McKenzie or something to try and suit up, that kind of thing. And he basically, said, and he didn't want to give too many names, but he basically said he was like, the major leagues are littered with guys who would be eligible. And
Right.
so he was like, if we can show that we're not, an also ran here, and if we can put up a good fight, I think that'll go a long way towards, solidifying a very competitive roster for 2026, which I want to see. It's super cool.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously we're of English heritage, and that would be fun to see. So
We are.
yeah, I'm here. I mean, I am, at least. You're not. I want to say grandma was.
Well, you know what? We learn something new every day, huh?
Yeah.
I look at that and I say,
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Of course. But
and then I
anyway.
say,
Oh!
but listen, so final
Well-
rankings for those of you who stuck with us to the end. I got USA, Mexico, Colombia. I'm going Great Britain, Canada.
Yeah, I agree.
So
I like it.
we're in complete agreement. I
We're in
do
agreement.
stand by. I'm a little worried about the U.S. team. Just 'cause it's
I'm not.
probably just because my expectations for them are so high.
True.
But I mean, they're coming off a win. They're finally the United States taking the tournament seriously.
Yeah.
But at the same time, a lot of other teams who have good baseball programs are also finally taking it seriously.
True.
Mexico has not really put together great teams in the past, from what I remember, and this year they really have put together a good team. I think that especially if they have Arias starting, like if the U.S. lost to Mexico, I would be disappointed. I don't think it would matter that much because they would just be the runner-up, because there's no way Colombia is going to beat out the U.S. So, yeah, I mean, the team to watch in this pool really is probably Mexico, just because they're the team that is not just definitely going to advance, but almost certainly will. And then they're probably the team with the most interesting matchup in the next round, because they are likely going to get the Dominican Republic.
Yeah, which will be a lot of fun to watch. And on any
Probably a
given day-
bloodbath. But listen, all those concerns I have about the U.S. hitting also go for the Dominican Republic, because they're also MLB players. They're on the same schedule, and they're
Well,
probably going to be going up against Arias.
Well, we'll get into the DR when
Right.
we do our next episode. Let's.
But I just mentioned to say, like, I think the team to watch, if you want to watch the most impactful games in this pool, is probably Mexico. Just 'cause I think that they're the team with the most to prove here, that actually has a shot.
Yeah, I like Mexico. I mean, I think the team that I'll be rooting for. I mean, obviously the U.S. I want to win the whole thing, but
rooting for the
we're
US.
taking them off the table. The team that I'm going to have my eye on the most is Great Britain. I just think they're a super fun story.
Yes.
Obviously, we have, we talked to Gabriel and stuff, and so I selfishly want them to do well. But
Right. I just don't think that Great Britain has a great
I understand
story,
what
and they
you're
have a
saying.
lot to play for, but they don't have any relevance because they're not gonna
impact on the
advance.
larger competition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if
I
Mexico
agree.
gets hot, they have an outside shot at winning. It would be an upset, but like
it
they
would
could
be-
win.
It would be very unlikely, but it would be a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah.
I think you nailed it. US, Mexico, Colombia, Great Britain, Canada. I think Great Britain and then Canada is that's a little bit of a scorcher, Tom. I think a lot of
Yeah.
people aren't going to be in agreement with us on that. And if somebody doesn't like that, feel free to email us at thebaseballpod@gmail.com or tweet at us at thebaseballpod2 on Twitter.
And also feel free to
Take it easy.
That's a good point.
just saying. I'm
That's a
just
good
saying,
point.
cool it.
That's a
So
good
guys,
point.
thanks for joining us for our
Thanks for joining us, man.
extended review of Pool C. We talked a lot on this one. This is a long one, but you know
Yeah.
what? We had I think we had a lot to hash out about the U.S. because you're very bullish on the U.S. and I'm a little bit worried. But I still think at the end of the day, the U.S. can end up in the finals. I don't think that's, I don't think there's a lot of people going against that. But I still have my worries. I'm traumatized from all the U.S. underperformance in the past. Let's put it like that.
That's
I
a
have
good
U.S.
point.
shell
I'm
shock.
younger than you. You're right.
I'm happy
One
to
more-
say, rather than having Mark DeRosa in the lineup, this time we can take solace in the fact that they have Mark DeRosa as the manager.
Not on the field, yeah.
Exactly.
One more thank you to Russell for coming on. Super educational. I really appreciate it, Russell. Go follow Bat Flips and Nerds everywhere, and go follow him on Twitter at @Eassom. Thanks again, Russell, and everybody look forward to our breakdown of Pool D coming up.
And guys, as always, there's only one thing I have to say to you before I bid you adieu, and you already know what it is, and that is, his name is Dan. We'll see you on the next one.